Okay, welcome everyone. Well done. You've made it to the last session of the day, so you've survived this far, and hopefully we can deliver a big grand finale now for you. So this is a session on energy security in the context of climate ambition. Very relevant session given what's happening in the world. Across the world, energy systems are under strain from geopolitical shocks to volatile fossil fuel pricing and to increasing electricity demand. But the solutions that address these challenges are not only available, they're already being deployed. And at the heart of this transformation going on are two powerful, mutually reinforcing strategies: accelerating the rollout of renewable energy and scaling up energy efficiency when they go together hand in hand. Together, these approaches offer the most sustainable and economical path to energy security. Renewables reduce exposure to fossil fuel volatility and decentralized supply, whereas energy efficiency lowers demand, lowers costs, and strengthens the resilience of the system. When combined, these create a virtuous cycle where less energy is needed and more of it comes from clean, secure, stable sources. Now, this is the vision behind two campaigns that the Climate Group runs, so RE100 and its energy efficiency campaign. RE100 brings together corporates who are committed to sourcing 100% renewable electricity, and our Smart Energy campaign unites those improving energy efficiency, doing more with less. So these initiatives show that business leadership is not only possible, but it's essential in driving the energy transition forward. So, what have we got in store for you today? We have a panel that reflects the leadership from industrial innovation to regional policy, and then from philanthropy to advocacy. And these insights will help us understand not only what's working, but what's possible when we deploy renewables and energy efficiency solutions as a united front. Now, before the panel, we have our keynote speaker. So I'd love to introduce to the stage Mayor Yvonne Akisoya of Freetown, who is also the C40 co-chair. So round of applause.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a real privilege to be here once more at New York Climate Week and to be among so many inspiring leaders from around the world, and particularly city leaders who, along with everyone else, are working to ensure our cities are more resilient and sustainable and just. As we gather here today, we have a common purpose: to ensure that the energy systems in our cities are not just functional, but transformative, providing reliable power, fostering economic growth, and creating opportunities for all of our residents. So energy is about the power that we use for our businesses, to light up and to warm our homes, but also to cook our food. And I want to actually turn this conversation away from what you would be accustomed to give you a little bit of an insight into what energy efficiency can look like in a city such as mine. Today, I would share with you, and for most of you, the only time you ever cook with wood is when you're doing a barbecue. But I would share with you that 82% of the residents in my city actually use wood for cooking. Now, that has significant impacts on deforestation, as you can imagine, at a time when climate change means deforestation is not what we want, but it also has devastating impacts on health. The need for local empowerment is vital in if energy security is to be community driven. When residents are part of the solution, energy becomes more reliable, affordable, and sustainable. For example, in Curitiba, Brazil, there is now a system with the local government that offers bidding windows for solar companies that hire and train women. Most important, of course, is climate financing, which is a barrier for many cities. Innovative approaches are achievable when the required finance is available. In Jakarta, another C40 city, partnerships between the city and international investors have funded renewable energy projects that reduce the emissions, which keep costs manageable. Achieving global climate goals require directing far more public and private finance towards city-led solutions that protect people, grow jobs, and reduce long-term risks. Cities are also leading in that direction today. C40 cities are proving that urban action can outpace national strategies. The data shows us that 3/4 of C40 cities are cutting emissions faster than their national governments. Here in New York, a C40 city, smart grid technologies are reducing energy waste. In Johannesburg, another C40 city, solar rooftops are powering low-income households. In closing, cities can accelerate full implementation of energy efficiency and renewable solutions by scaling up investment and expanding renewable energy systems. This ensures progress in both demand and the supply side of the COP28 pledge. One of the things that we've become accustomed to saying in the last few months, and we will continue to say in the run-up to COP30, is that cities are turning from ambition to action, and it's no different when it comes to energy efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. That was very interesting to hear. A very innovative solution. And as you said, looking at it in the whole for the health benefits, climate resilient benefits, as well as reducing fossil fuel use. And some really nice examples across other C40 cities as well. Okay, so let's get to the panel. So I'd love to invite the panelists onto the stage. So firstly, let's welcome Brandon Spencer, who's the president of Motion Business at the global manufacturing company ABB. Then next, Paula Glover, who is the president of Alliance to Save Energy, which is an NGO focusing on energy efficiency. And then afterwards, Pablo. So we have Pablo Gabuti, who is the Secretary of Energy Transition for the province of Cordoba. I hope my pronunciation was okay there, in Argentina. And then finally, Kate Williams, who's the CEO of 1% for the Planet. And that's an organization focused on philanthropy for environmental projects and nonprofits. So if we could welcome them all to the stage. Right. Well, thank you for being here, and look forward to the insights and experiences on the topic of energy security. So first, Brandon, let's go to you. So ABB works at the intersection of industrial innovation and energy systems. So what technologies or strategies are proving most effective in helping businesses optimize their energy consumption whilst decarbonizing as well?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to Climate Week for the opportunity to be here, and maybe 10 seconds on ABB for those that don't know, as it's not maybe a household name here in the U.S. But we're the largest, one of the largest companies in the world that's helping electrify industry, automate industry, and digitalize industry. So we cut across all types of industrial plants, from power generation to food and beverage to data centers, you name it. And it's our technology that's trying to move it forward. So if you think about the question, and it was interesting in the keynote about energy efficiency, it's kind of the number one thing that's out there that's available now that we're underutilizing. If I think about energy efficiency, majority of the motors that we sell today, electric motors that we sell today, are yesterday's technology. They're lower efficiency classes. And so there's a lot that can be gained just by updating to today's technology. So we don't have to wait for some magic new development. There's technology that's available today that we can deploy that can pick up 10, 15% on efficiency. That's also 10% that can go back on the grid. So when you start thinking about some of the challenges that different markets have around the world, or different industries have around the world of accessing power, that's a way that you can do it. We're also utilizing different technologies to help bring renewables onto the grid. Getting the interconnects and all that is one thing, and permitting and all these sort of things that have to happen, but the intermittency that comes with renewables, so they go in and out. They're not as always as reliable. So what kind of technology can we bring that exists now in order to make them more reliable and make grids more resilient? So we're doing those things. And so I think it's a combination really of being practical, that there are solutions available now that can help have an impact on energy security and decarbonization. I mean, we say in ABB, the greenest unit of energy is the one you never consume, and yet it doesn't get that much attention. We sold a motor just recently in India, 99.13% efficient. Payback on that investment is 3 months. It uses $6 million less electricity across its lifetime and produces less emissions. What boardroom, what C-suite isn't interested in a payback of 3 months on a capital investment? And this is technology that's there today. And so, hopefully the message from ABB across this week and at the events that we're at is that there's practical things we can do now. It involves a lot of us, but there's practical things we can do now to help energy securitization and decarbonization at the same time. They're not opposing forces on a magnet. That's not what it is. So great opportunity, and happy to be with the panel today and hear about what others are doing as well.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. And really, you're hitting on the topic of the next question very well, which, you talked about energy efficiency being underutilized.
I was trying to set it up.
Well, thank you. You did it fantastically. So, Paul, I'd like to bring you in on this. And again, you mentioned it's the greenest fuel, right? Essentially, of the electron that you don't use. And energy efficiency is often called the first fuel. So what policies or market levers are most underused today that could rapidly scale energy efficiency and deliver both the climate and energy security benefits?
I mean, not to be a smart ass, but all of the policies are underutilized that would advance energy efficiency. I think what I always, we talk about doing more, using less, efficiency being the first fuel. And in today's environment where there's so much conversation about increasing demand and trying to understand, is it 3%? Is it 20%? We do not treat demand like supply. So at the Alliance, we say demand is the new supply. That means that you can reduce demand. You don't actually have to invest in building new things, but that we can invest in infrastructure that is already existing now and technology that we already have today. And that does not mean that eventually we may not need to build more stuff. It just means that to meet this moment with high cost and inflation and all the other things that are also going on, in addition to just the constraints on our system, efficiency really is the first response. And so when we think about the policies that we need, and I say all of them, it's tax incentives, it's programs like Energy Star, it's unfortunately for, our administration doesn't like this, but it is building standards and performance goals. That is part of what we need to see happen. But it's also weatherization. It's ensuring that people have, a good solid building envelope that they're working in. It's digital technology, it's digital twins, it's smart meters, it's HVAC systems. There's so much that's currently available that we are not even scratching the surface. And I would suggest, and certainly our report found, that if we invested wholly in energy efficiency, certainly in the United States, we would unlock about 200 gigawatts of capacity in our existing grid. And so it really is about how do you spend your money? And I would say this is the smart way to do it.
Yep.
So as a quick follow-up question then, why? Why, as in the payback periods you've both mentioned, 200 gigawatts, that's incredible.
Yes.
Why do you feel it is being underutilized by policymakers?
I mean, I think, we have to accept that investment for people is always a difficult choice. And so if it's a small business that's making an investment in efficiency, they're making choices on a lot of other things to decide that this is the investment that they want to make. And then we need those kinds of tools, performance contracts. We need to have the tax credits. Those are things that are going to incentivize people to do things. But our challenge, I think, in efficiency is that it's an investment.
Yep.
And so getting people to make this investment a priority versus other investments, particularly when money is tight, becomes more challenging. But I would also say that our savings is ongoing, right? You're not saving $100 the first month. You're saving $100 every single month that you have this. And so we at the Alliance are really trying to communicate to people the importance of this investment, but that it's a long-term savings that they will always be able to count on as opposed to a quick hit.
I think if I can add one thing to it, I think one challenge to getting it implemented is there's a lot of people in the value chain before something is built. And a lot of the people in the value chain aren't paying the energy bills. They're not the ones that are necessarily subject to the regulation. And so we need help getting up the value chain, up the food chain, so that we can implement these higher efficiency classes and higher standards, because ultimately someone's paying the power bill and ultimately someone's putting more emissions into the sky, and it's one sky. And so I think we need help across industry, across regulatory, across everyone in order to do that, because you can't just talk to one group of people and think that it's going to get implemented all the way across the value chain.
So let's move on to that regulatory side mentioned there. So Pablo, to come over to you then, from your experience in Cordoba, do you see opportunities on this working together for governments to work with private sector to align around the energy transition goals?
Absolutely. First, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks, Climate Group, for the invitation. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today. So for subnational governments like ours, one of the key things we can do and opportunities we see is to create the conditions for a market where energy transition can become truly a profitable path for the private sector. And that requires what I consider to be one of the main priorities of any government, which is to de-risking investment. So that translates to, of course, creating a clear and predictable regulatory framework and setting the correct targets. But it also means constructing the foundational infrastructure that is going to allow the private capital to flourish. And that means electricity transmission lines, that means roads, that means pipelines, and everything that can unlock and enable private capital to invest with less risk. In order to align the goals of the private and public sector, I think both we need to understand energy transition as something that is beyond sustainability. It is also part of a bigger transformation that we are experiencing that also involves economic and technological perspectives. So very briefly, from the economic side, I think we have to debunk the false idea that aiming for sustainability always has a trade-off with competitivity. That's not the case. Maybe some things, but not always. In Cordoba, we do have many companies, as Brando was saying, that are showing significant reduction on operational costs by taking seriously energy efficiency and by generating themselves a part of the electricity they consume with renewables. And similarly, we also have cases of production biofuels close to the area of consumption, especially agriculture sector, where not only gives you decarbonization maybe of transportation or reducing methane emissions, but also allows you to have a higher resiliency for external shocks like supply crisis or something like that. So I think that's on the economic side, and on the technological side, we have all witnessed how other industries like finance, media, entertainment, and telecommunications have been disrupted and have seen how central analogic models rapidly transform to decentralized, digitalized, and digital ecosystems. But the energy sector has been resistant so far, this type of disruption. And I think that's over. I think that now the next few years, we're going to see a very similar trajectory. We see it on innovation on day-to-day basis, like energy storage with batteries, electric mobility, distributed energy generation frameworks, and much more than shows that we are clearly in front of a very important paradigm shift. So we're going to see interesting years ahead, I think.
Okay. I'm a little bit interested in of maybe what you have done in Cordoba. Are there any sort of key lessons that you could mention that anyone who's looking at this
Wow.
from another region you might get to share?
Yeah, I will mention some of the lessons from successes, but because the mistakes are going to be longer. So from the some of the things that went well, I think that although mistakes also give you usually better lessons, right? But some of the things that we can share as successes is like empowering from the bottom up with clear rules. Like in Cordoba, one of our key strategies is distributed generation energy, decentralizing the electricity generation, and we are leading the ranking in Argentina in users and power installed in our territory. And for that, we just had to put a stable regulatory framework, and that shows you that with no much more than that and the right price signal, of course, you can have you can unleash the potential of citizens and businesses alike to really democratize energy generation. And then another one is we have been very conscious about linking our transition strategy to our economic strength. We have a very important agriculture sector, so we are putting a lot of attention into the promotion of biofuels, especially biogas or biomethane. And that has both, like I said before, the possibility of decarbonize, but not as a premium, but as something that is at the same time adding value to a strategic area economically wise. And lastly, as just not to be too repetitive, but the numbers have to work. Like you cannot think about profitability as an afterthought. It has to be designed at the heart of any policy from the get-go, and that, as was said before, it means tax credits, tax policy, the right price signals. It also needs maybe minimal bureaucracy for permits and infrastructure and many of other things. But I think that we cannot ask the private sector to go to a loss. You need to make them as good as you can, so the business is like really tempting.
A very key point. Yeah. So, Kate, over to you then. Very interesting vantage point you have in terms of mobilizing corporate philanthropy around sustainability issues. So, how can businesses be incentivized to prioritize energy efficiency and renewables? So, almost does follow very nicely from that last point that Pablo said, as part of their wider climate commitments.
Yeah, thanks. And Pablo, I would absolutely build on making it tempting for businesses because I do think that's so important. So, hello, great to be here. And let me just say a little bit about 1% for the planet, what it is, so that I can then explain sort of how it works and ties to so much of what we're talking about here. We're a global movement or a global ecosystem of businesses and nonprofits, and it all hangs together around an annual commitment. So every business that's a member every year gives 1% of their annual revenues, not profits, revenues, to environmental partners or nonprofits. And we certify that. We don't act as a foundation. We don't take it in, but we certify that that happens every year. So essentially what we're creating is a system for change that's based on consistent incremental allocations of strategic resources to things we care about, like energy efficiency, renewables, and many other areas in the environmental space. And really core to what we do is creating a theory of change, because to reflect on some of what we've been talking about here, one of the things that we've observed is that for a lot of businesses, it can be overwhelming when they're trying to make spatulas or tequila or clothing, to then understand where should we make our investments around energy. Their expertise is in the business that they're trying to be really successful in. And so breaking it down into a community and a system where we have developed a theory of change, which I think creates the momentum for businesses to make other changes. And that theory is that simple actions done repeatedly in community are how we drive change at scale. And we've seen that where our model is proof of concept. So in my first year, which was 10 years ago, we had in our lifetime certified $100 million US, and that was about 14 years into the organization's existence. Last year alone, we certified $110 million US, and our lifetime certification is now north of 800 million, on track to $1 billion. And so we are seeing that aggregation of those incremental 1% really adds up. And some of the things that, are critical to that, one is sort of breaking it down so that change that might seem overwhelming or even paralyzing can seem like, okay, we can figure this out. The other is strategy. So we have a framework of 4 impact areas: just economies, resilient communities, rights to nature, and conservation and restoration. And themes of renewables and energy efficiency and climate mitigation are threaded throughout those. And last year, or in the last 3 years, in those different categories, we've given about 10 million, or our companies have given about 10 million to efficiency and renewable nonprofits. And then the other thing I would just say is this community creates a really powerful opportunity for change. So we certify the 1% giving, but then we have companies that are in communication with each other because they've made this shared commitment. And so, we have a company, for example, Climate First Bank, that does solar loans. We don't certify their solar loans as part of their giving, but they represent an example. And now we have many of our companies who are starting to do business with them. So where they bank is now contributing to the renewable, climate smart economy. So much more to say, but I'll leave it there.
That's a really interesting example at the end. Okay, so let's open it up to the whole panel. So I've got a couple of questions, but just jump in and let's make it, I guess, more of a conversation. So firstly, what roadblocks and risks do we need to overcome to enable change? And how are external factors that are happening at the moment having an impact? And what do we have to do to utilize those to actually be a benefit for us?
I think, for us in the States, the fact that we don't have consistent regulation across jurisdictions, we don't have consistent rules across states. It could be different. Every state can be different. Within a state, it could be different. And so, right, if businesses operate with consistency, if we don't provide consistency in the way that our regulatory structure doesn't give them that. So that's really hard. And then also, right, we have a political environment that here in the United States tends to shift and swing really hard. And so how do you make an investment today if it may be in a year, 18 months, a new administration is going to say, no, that's not the investment that we're going to incentivize. And so that kind of thing also makes it really, really kind of difficult. And I think if we could get just those 2 things, it would be major to get us done.
Yeah, maybe to add on that, in Argentina, I'm going to talk about our case, but I think it is like you can take as an example that many other national states are going through. We had 2 more to add to the inconsistency on the project, on the uncertainty of regulatory frameworks, which is macroeconomic roadblocks. Maybe whoever of you are familiar with Argentina know that we have a very volatile economy, and high interest and uncertainty is a hurdle, especially in long-term type of investments like the energy sector requires, where you are investing a payment or an amount that is going through many years, and you need to have that type of clarity and uncertainty. And the other one is I already mentioned the importance of infrastructure, but some infrastructure cannot be solved by subnational state. Like, for example, high voltage electricity lines is a bottleneck for renewables. You've been in Argentina, you know how much potential we have. Like, we have wind, we have solar, we have hydro, we have everything. What is the main bottleneck right now? You can tell them better than me. Is infrastructure to inject the energy. So that requires a protagonism from the national government that maybe subnational states cannot alone solve. So to add to the regulatory thing, I think that those are 2: macroeconomics and infrastructure on with very high amounts.
I would maybe just build on that if that's all right to take one more point at that. I think we are such a short-term focused economy, to state the obvious, and so I think to um, think about what are the how do we create more incentives for longer term thinking. So we work with mostly private companies, and I think that we get a little bit of an opportunity to work with companies who are in some cases really thinking about how they can be an evergreen company. They may be a family company, and they do have the ability to then sort of see their way through to investments that might have that better longer term future, good business case for it, but maybe not tomorrow, maybe in a year. So I do think definitely don't have the solution to that, but I do think a roadblock is, short-term metrics, short-term return pressure, when a lot of the outcomes that we really need to be measuring ourselves by are going to be seen a little bit longer term. Although I am a little vexed by your 3-month payback, because I feel like that totally fits our short-term economy, so that should be getting covered.
I mean, I was going to mention is 3 months. Yeah, long term.
I mean, look, one thing we're doing a little different spin on answering the question, but I think it goes to the volatility, geopolitical volatility, regulatory volatility. We're kind of the belief that there's not going to be these standards that exist. Protectionism is going to probably get a bit stronger. And so, having all of Europe on the same standard for certain things, that's a very difficult sell. Same in the US, in Asia, wherever it is. And so one thing that we've done to enable innovation and to try and attack these things is a local for local strategy. And so I would challenge anyone in the room. It used to be that you had to have global supply chains and standardization of how you do everything and all these sort of things. We take the opposite approach in ABB, that in India, they develop what they need in India to serve that local market. They source the products there, they do the R&D there, they do the manufacturing there, and we're now almost 90% local for local in India. We're plus 90% in China. We're 95+% in Europe, and we're coming up over 80% in the US, to allow our local units to feed the local markets to whatever specs they need for product development, whatever standards they need to comply to, whatever product variants they need to have, all these sort of things. And so it's a little different spin, but if anyone in the room is in manufacturing or any of those sort of businesses, happy to chat with what our learnings have been of global versus local. And we're certainly local for local to try and de-risk some of the challenges that exist to help our customers decarbonize their business. And so that's a big focus for us in ABB.
Okay, so certainly some political barriers in the way, which is feels funny when I think most governments
We haven't noticed
that.
that.
Yeah, we have. Has that been happening? No. Okay. So on to the next question then. So moving on from barriers, let's think more on the positive side around where there are opportunities. So joint opportunities, where are they? Who's leading, and how can we succeed together in taking them on?
I can jump in on this one because I think in a lot of ways 1% for the planet was created as the way to build opportunity regardless of what's going on in the economy. We're certainly economy affected, but we can handle different economic systems, different political systems. It creates a model for companies to take action and to take a simple step. If the regulations change, in your favor or against you, the 1% for the planet model creates a way for there to be an impact opportunity. And so I think one of the things that we really think a lot about is, what's the latitude within capitalism for driving change, in volatile systems. There's a lot of choices that companies can make. And we do have some really great data now on companies who've been with us for 10 or 15 years. And we've been able to do some just aggregate looking at the growth of our companies in terms of revenue. So to your business point, and about 72% of our companies have seen revenue growth over the last 3 years. So, what we're seeing is that when companies are able to say, okay, There's always going to be a lot going on. We are always going to be operating in that volatile environment. They're not going to be standards. To your point, I love how you're thinking about that. So what are some consistent things that we can do and that we can build and that we can be strategic about that can enable us to drive change? And the lever that our companies are, pulling on right now is philanthropy. And so they're also able to really be pretty strategic and adaptable to, what are the different things that sort of need our allocations. And we also have a very local first strategy. Most of our companies are making smaller grants locally that have a big impact in that local area. So one example is the Maine Beer Company, just right up the road in Maine, that gave $25,000 to a local organic farm and education center to convert to solar. And so, that's one small example, but, like so many things, if you get it right locally and then you kind of create those building blocks and stack those bricks, it creates quite a bit of change over time. So I think that's a huge opportunity that we have.
Two quick ones from my side. I think one, it's great to be at an event like this because I think with Paula and Kate, we have this energy efficiency movement, which is industrial companies, and it started with us and Alpha Laval saying we wanted to implement this in our own operations, but also help our customers monetize energy efficiency. And now we're up to 500, 600 different companies that have joined the pledge to try and be a part of it. So it might be a place that the three of us can connect to say, how do we help each other? Because it's all kind of the common good, right? So I think a good thing that comes from these kind of sessions is that we meet like-minded people that want to try and help be part of the solution and not part of the challenge or the problem. I think the second thing, it goes a little bit to your point, ABB is a healthy company. We've got a healthy balance sheet. And so we also place bets in technology. So last year we invested in 25 different companies, $5 million to $20 million to try and help stoke technology, to try and bring it to market, bring it to scale, these kind of things. So offer industry expertise, application expertise, access to different industries. And I think it's really important for corporates to have a high say-do ratio. Don't just talk about it or tell others what they're supposed to do. Do it yourselves. And ABV is certainly walking that walk by trying to invest in these other companies. And, some of them are successful, some of them are not. And we take the hit. But I think that's part of our responsibility and part of our social commitment that I'm certainly proud to be a part of.
Yeah. I think I would say, just as the mayor shared earlier, right, cities and states are still moving forward. And so you always have to remember that while some may be standing still, there are others that are still moving forward. And so that's an opportunity, one, to learn from those who are still progressing, right? We should be watching, doing what we can to support and learn from that. Because I think we're all going to get there, right? I think to the earliest point is like, it's one sky.
Yeah.
Like at some point, we all have to actually land in the same place, or we just don't land at all. And so I think this time is an opportunity for us to learn from one another, to be creative. I think it's a really great opportunity to be creative, particularly when there's so many challenges, that it encourages us to start to think about, are there other kinds of solutions? So for us at the Alliance, we think about, is there a role of blockchain in doing measurement and verification? Is there an opportunity? We have a project where working with HBCUs and using energy efficiency as a way to make them more competitive in the marketplace around higher education, because they have so much deferred maintenance. And this morning there was an article in the Times that talked about the number of students who are applying for colleges are going down. So now we really do need to do this. So I think it really is the opportunities for us to be more creative and look at those pockets where things are being done and watch those and do those, but take those lessons so that where things aren't being done, you should still be working on it and figuring out how do we encourage and move people in the way, or understand why they're resistant and come up with a better solution.
Yeah. Adding to the previous answers, I would say that as to the joint opportunities, I would add the geopolitical dimension. I think that regional from an energy security point of view, or an energy security strategy is key to have a regional integration strategy. Of course, that also comes with the risks that brings, and I think there is a balance to strike between the local resilience and the reliance on neighborhood. You can see many examples, for example, with the the Ukraine war and Middle East crisis and tariffs were things that were very robust from an energy point of view. From one day to the other, created a lot of fragility. But at the same time, we have seen in Argentina with gas and hydroelectric power and many other things, a lot of opportunities. So there is a piece of the puzzle that has to be very well calibrated on energy security, specifically with integration. And then on who is leading and what things we can learn from other jurisdictions. I think there are many examples at different levels, but the best combination is when well-established national frameworks enable subnational leadership. So I've been recently in Brazil, where they have a very clear strategy on fuels for the future with a national law. And you can see how the states are leading, São Paulo and many others, in biomethane thanks to that. Something we should learn from there in Argentina being so close. And then another example is national targets or objectives and local implementation is France, for example, with smart grid policies. They have like a very, very high coverage of smart metering with more than 40 million smart meters installed. And they're doing various interesting things that have to do with energy security because they allow you to have grid flexibility, demand side management at the big moments, which are the moments that you invest for. Like in Córdoba, we have an investment size for 85 hours a year, which are the critical 85 hours. So if we have been speaking about efficiency from the consumption part, but there is also efficiency from the managing of the infrastructure and the distribution side. So I think that's an interesting space to explore as well, especially with what I said before, that is the innovation we are seeing in digitalization of energy generation and transmission.
So we have the COP28 pledge, which was to triple renewable energy capacity globally by 2030, as well as doubling the rate of energy efficiency. So let's get practical. Was it the say-do ratio? Let's go from the say to the do. What are the practical steps that we can take to advance that commitment and see that, by 2030, we're there?
I mean, I would say and it's really hard, but I think we do have to do more around educating consumers and businesses about what efficiency is, what it does, and what those opportunities are. And that's a really hard thing. Like we always say, you have to communicate and educate, and you think it's easy, but it's really very expensive and it's really very hard. But that's actually, I think, the work that we have to do because people don't really necessarily understand what we're talking about. And certainly for the Alliance, we've described it as energy efficiency. We've described it as energy productivity. When I started my career, it was called conservation and load management. And so there are all these terms. Is it demand response? Is it a DSM program? Is it is it distributed generation? Like all of these things kind of fall underneath this umbrella. And I think we do need to just educate people about what the heck we're talking about if we want them to spend and invest in our technology.
And the benefits of it, right?
Yeah.
I think I agree fully, and I think maybe two things. One, consistency. So I love your 1% difference consistently over time measured. I think it's really important. So consistency. We can't pivot just because the pendulum swings socially or geopolitically.
Yeah.
We have to stay the course, and it requires a backbone. And I think you have to do it. So we need consistency to stay the course, and so I think that's really important. And then I think we also have to take back the narrative. It can be good for the wallet and good for the planet. Those aren't mutually exclusive. And so the way we communicate, the way we message everything's got to be about good for the wallet, good for the planet, because that's what's going to get attention. And so I think if we can find out a way to speak a common language with kind of that positioning, it would go a long way in helping educate.
Yeah, adding on that, I would say that maybe this is on topic with all I've heard before in previous panels, that I think one key thing is to empower subnational states. And this is a longer conversation, but part of that strategy has to do with giving direct access to the international finance to subnational states. So we don't have a very tight fate than the national government. So if the national government is not giving priorities to this type of things, we can go direct, showing that we have the numbers and the performance to be worthy of getting that finance. And then on our side, I think not to repeat things that I said before, so I'm going to say something new. I think we really need to take seriously slashing red tape. Like we really need to streamline the process for permits and everything related to creating projects, for example, in renewables. And lastly, I would say promoting decentralization and modernizing the grid. My background is in economics, so I think that along the education, price science. If you have smart meters, you can do price by hour. You can show the market ways that they can internalize the difference between being efficient with the pocket and not only with the moral of it. So I think that has to go hand to hand with the education.
And I'll just say really quickly, because I know we only have a few seconds left, but I think having the courage and clarity to stay the course sometimes takes communities of peers, influencing and supporting each other. And we often see in our community, again, even though we're certifying the 1% going to philanthropy, our brands are connecting with each other and kind of swapping best practices about how they're handling things like efficiency or switching to different forms of manufacturing. So I do think really putting those systems in place that bring down the barriers to making changes.
Okay. So if we could just do a round of applause for our panel. Thank you very much. It was a very rich and interesting conversation. Sounds like a party is starting somewhere, so I don't want to be the person in between all of you and the party. But maybe just a few closing remarks. I think a very clear message coming through from the panel today was that energy security, growth as an economic opportunities, and climate ambition, they're not competing, and they go hand in hand and are deeply aligned. And the most effective way to secure energy systems for the long term, on the long-term thinking we were discussing, is to accelerate that deployment of renewables and improve energy efficiency. This dual strategy is not only technically sound, it's economically and socially viable. And it's already happening. It's already been championed by over 500 organizations as part of our RE100 campaign, and also our energy efficiency initiative as well. And these campaigns demonstrate that when businesses commit to 100% renewable energy and improving their energy productivity, it's not just their climate goals that are benefiting, they're lowering their costs, 3-month payback, and securing operations against future shocks. So these examples today have been really helpful to demonstrate that. The regional partnerships discussed, different technologies, and show that this progress is not just possible, it's scalable. And the challenge now is to move faster and go further and bring more stakeholders into the fold. So energy security through clean energy is not a distant goal, it's a present opportunity. So thank you all for being part of the conversation today. And let's move on to the party. So thank you.